Good afternoon and good evening to the rest of you. We are back. It's Friday. Thank God. TGIF. You know, you know the drill. It is I, your host Q, coming to you from my mother's basement, and I am joined by none other than my co-host P. How goes it, P?
As always, it goes fantastically. It's going good,
And
man. It's going good.
it's Friday, so you know how we do it. You got to mind your P's and Q's, and we're joined by our producer Chris, coming on camera with us. How goes it, Chris?
Hanging in there, trying to just, steer the ship in the direction to get us to the weekend. How's it going, guys?
Whoa! Don't throw us
Yeah,
under the
fuck
bus
you.
that quick. Like I get it. We're on a little bit of a tape delay. Like we filmed this 30 minutes ago. This is not actually live. Full disclosure, we are live on air right now. Yes. Where we want to start? I am like truly losing my mind with the stupidity of the people who have power and influence in our country, making bonkers decisions. But maybe I'm just young and naive and have had not enough experience dealing with the stupidity that is politicians.
Yeah, I guess I'll start there. I mean, obviously, New York is trying to push through a ban for Bitcoin mining, not using renewables. I'll give just like a basis of the details, at least of what I've read. It has gone and cleared through the state assembly. The way that they did it was kind of really sketchy, to say the least. It was done at like almost midnight last night. So, politicians never work aside from when they want to jam something through that benefits them or props up their agenda. So, surprisingly, they were burning the midnight oil and basically no one knew. This hasn't technically gone through yet. Technically, Governor Hogle, is that her name? Hogle? She could veto it. Very unlikely though. So we might as well consider this like basically like 95% passed at this point, unless maybe even 99%. But basically what it says that for the next 2 years, if you're not using 100% renewables, they potentially won't renew your permit if you have one. If you have one outstanding to get started, they're not going to verify it or sign off on it unless you are using 100% renewables. And yeah, it's just basically New York's has only the second strictest ban in the world, only to China. So yeah, it's pretty crazy that in the United States, or the financial capital of the world, China is more restrictive than New York City or New York overall as a whole. If you guys want to keep going on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's fucking ridiculous. It's so misinformed and misguided. It honestly doesn't surprise me at all. We see this at a nation level with the perceptions and the ideas that are propagated around nuclear energy, which is one of the most effective, cleanest forms of energy production around. But people have this fear that is not based in reality. And that's exactly what we're seeing here, but in a different way, around Bitcoin mining and proof of work mining. People just don't understand it, and people fear what they don't understand. But it is disappointing. I was born in the state of New York, and at the same time, I'm like, hey, look, if you want to dig your own grave and then get in it and then, push dirt slowly onto yourself, like that's your prerogative, I guess. It's really sad for all the people that live in New York and the great city of New York, because this, in the same way that, China banning Bitcoin mining pushed miners or a large number of miners out of China, which ultimately is bad for the people of China. This will be terrible for the businesses and the future success of the people that live in the state of New York. This just basically makes New York a non-starter for the vast majority of the Bitcoin community. And that's short-sighted and stupid, to say the least.
Well, I think there's one clarifying point that does need to be made, that it is a restriction on Bitcoin mining that is going to utilize carbon energy. And New York State does have a lot of hydropower energy resources. And so, like, based on my understanding, none of the carbon utilizing Bitcoin mining farms are going to be shut down. There's one that hasn't yet been built out, but the permits were approved, but now the expectation is that these permits might actually change. So I'm just curious to see how this gets implemented and if this further incentivizes like attempts at renewable energy, or if people will just circumvent that to go to easier jurisdictions, which I candidly think you're going to go with the latter. Why jump through extra hoops in the state of New York if the state of Texas or the state of Wyoming is like, you know, you want one
Come
of these
through,
power
bro.
outlets? You want
Yeah, I mean,
you want one of these power outlets? Like, it's very, very interesting to see. Um, I think how other states are responding to this. And I'm curious if this will literally turn into like a marketing slogan for a place like Shitcoinery Miami. Oh, we're not going to stop you from mining Bitcoin. We're not going to stop proof of work mining. Come on down.
but I mean, why does it have to be a advertising campaign for, somewhere like Miami, right? It can be a very valid and funny advertising campaign for, as you said, the state of Wyoming. Like, tired of getting fucked over by the state of New York? Well, come on down to, wherever and have fun.
I was just using Miami as an example, but I'm saying like, if I'm a city planner or any of these jurisdictions that has been vocal, like if I work in the city of Dallas or Fort Worth, which has the Bitcoin, they have their own miner in the Fort Worth City Hall. Like, I would literally start a campaign out of Fort Worth targeting every business, every Bitcoiner out of New York State and say, like, we'll help you. We'll, I don't know, send boxes. We'll send moving vans from Texas to pick up your stuff in New York and move it for you. Like, whatever it is. Like, dude, if I am trying to really cement my city as the hub for Bitcoin mining, I would capitalize on this faux pas by the state of New York. Like that
Yeah,
should
that's just good
be,
business.
exactly. That's just
For sure.
business.
But not only that, like, I mean, I think I would advise everyone should absolutely be doing that, whether you're a state or just a company that exists in a more favorable Bitcoin mining state. Yeah, you should totally turn this into a funny meme and get everybody to buy your shit.
I also like there's a point that I've brought up, P, long before you ever graced us with your beauty and presence on screen. But I've been very vocal about saying the next iteration of clean energy, like green energy capture, utilization, and efficiency is going to come out of the mining space. I mean, we already saw it with the way companies like Upstream Data are now utilizing like flaring, like taking away the flaring of methane gas and using that methane gas to power miners. We're going to see more developments like that. And I'm curious if, being stuck in a state like New York will incentivize some people, some very, very smart people, to try and find these ways. Because again, this is not an outright ban on mining. It's just a ban on using carbon like using energy that's sourced from fossil fuels. While like it sounds good on paper and like it's a really flashy tagline and people are gonna be like, oh, like New York State like cares about the environment. It's like, no, like they're clearly showing that they have no clear understanding of how energy is sent around their state, and they're just attacking something they don't understand. So it'll be interesting to see what, if anything, just comes from the people living in New York, and if they're able to maybe create new ways to thoughtfully mine Bitcoin while adhering to the rules that have now, or the restrictions, I'd rather say, that have been put on them.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bigger thing here is, to your point, I actually don't know off the top of my head like what the percentages of the energy that is produced or available in the state of New York is produced from carbon rich or resources versus renewable and things like that. But I think it's more about the signal that it sends. I mean, everybody has known for a while now that New York is, anti-crypto, anti-Bitcoin, and this is just kind of another nail in the coffin. So to your point, like there are many miners in New York who are going to be, sticking around, and they're going to continue to use hydrothermal or solar or whatever they're using. But I think this is just, it is clearer and clearer to me that, New York State is going to be one of the most hostile states to Bitcoin. And that will eventually be terrible for the people that live in the state of New York. But they can move, you can vote with your feet. And as I certainly did that recently, this last year, moved from the golden state of California to Tennessee, because I was tired of living in a state that was engaging in policies and things that I just did not agree with.
I want to tell you something that just happened that I haven't sent to my girlfriend, but this is the straw that is breaking the camel's back in Los Angeles for me. So Los Angeles is like a food hub. Like there's some great cuisine here. I will fight anyone that says there's better Mexican food other than in Mexico outside of Los Angeles. Like, no, Tex-Mex has nothing on LA Mexican food, and I'll fight you. Sushi, phenomenal here. Another really great type of cuisine in Los Angeles is actually Korean barbecue. Like very well known. Some of the best KBBQ restaurants in America are in Los Angeles. Los Angeles just passed a new law banning gas stovetops in residential and commercial buildings that are now being built.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Dude, like I'm sitting here like, wait a minute. Like if I go upstairs right now in my own home's kitchen, I've got a gas stovetop. And it's...
So what do they want to use other? It has to just be electric?
I guess, but it's like, dude, do you understand? Like, you don't get it. You just don't get where electricity comes from in this fucking city.
Wait, we're not even talking about electricity, though. We're talking about fucking heat that is used to cook food.
Right. Like, but we're supposed to essentially be using like electric stovetops, and like, don't even get me started. That shit sucks. Like, I hate when I don't have like a gas stovetop. I hate cooking on a non-gas stovetop.
Wait, this is for like commercial kitchens as well?
Los Angeles counties, both commercial and residential. However, it's not going to like, they're not going to go knocking on everyone's door being like, you got to change out your stovetop. It's going to be for any new constructions that are being done. And if you remodel your building or your home or your office, you are subject to then having that get changed during the remodeling. So yeah,
it's fucking stupid.
Fuck Los Angeles. I fucking hate it here sometimes.
Are they going to squeeze you out, Q? Are they going to squeeze you out? That's the true question.
Dude, can someone just give my girlfriend a remote job as an entry-level recruiter for your company? And I will literally be gone. That is the only reason that I'm still in Los Angeles. Like, seriously, strike. We applied. Give her an interview. But actually, this is also, I think, relevant to talk about through the context of like we're in a bear market in Bitcoin. Elon Musk recently put out a statement saying like he thinks the economy is going to get a lot worse, and they're anticipating about a 10% layoff of Tesla employees. And there's an article coming out about Coinbase recently having to literally send out offers and then renege them. And now they may potentially be going through a layoff and laying off some people. Gemini going through a similar thing and laying off about 10% of its workforce. And we're starting to see the effects of the recession happen before the recession is being told, oh, we're in a recession based on these economic calculations. Like, no, you have the tech sector laying off people across industry, whether you're in Bitcoin, whether you're in crypto, whether you're just broad tech, whether you're a SaaS company, like every single tech company is going through layoffs right now, due in large part to the fact that money is becoming more expensive with rates going up. Your forward forecasts are looking worse and worse as a result. And so what do you have to do? Well, we're not making as much money as we thought we would, or as much as we said we would. So all the growth that we had in the last 2 years where we were just, you're hired and you get a job and you get a job. Oh, Q, you applied? No, Q does not get a job, but you get a job and you get a job. Everyone else got a job in tech except for me. That's how I ended up here. But now they're all going through layoffs. So I think it's like things are about to get a lot worse. And I'm curious if either of you have thoughts or feelings about, other areas of the broader economy that you're paying attention to as signals that we are in a recession. I know, Chris, we were joking on Twitter maybe a couple weeks ago about the stripper index.
Yeah. I do have thoughts and feelings. I'll talk about the stripper index in a second, but I feel like P and I were shafted because you chose the tech sector over us if that opportunity arose. So I feel slightly hurt by that, Q.
Look,
As you should.
I was a full blown, like, I was trying to be a data scientist. I actually applied to Coinbase like 7 times, and like I don't remember
You
the
should
guy who I
brag
reached
about
out to
that.
on LinkedIn. I mean, I don't brag about it. I never got the job. I didn't even get so much as an interview. Like, fuck you guys. But all of those rejections for like data analyst and data scientist positions like prompted me to start my own data analytics like consulting business. So thank you for rejecting me.
Yeah, but there was a stripper on Twitter. I forget her account. I apologize, but she said something that was really funny. She's like, if strip clubs are a leading indicator for recession or depression, we are in a recession because there's a lot less clients in here right now. And I sent it to Q, and I thought it was hilarious. It was a metric that him and Dylan LeClaire and Sam Rule should include for their macro and on-chain analysts.
Yeah, that checks out. Disposable income.
It's just,
I
like,
will say
there
I
are
have
these
never.
little-
I'll say I have never understood strip clubs as a thing. Like,
Dude,
I've
so
just never
gross.
been willing to waste that much money. Like, why the fuck would you go in? And I mean, I obviously there's reasons for this, but I've never been able to justify it. It just seems
The only times I've ever gone to strip clubs are at this point in my life
are
because of
Monday,
bachelor
Wednesdays,
parties.
and Fridays.
Days that end in Y.
And man, the buffet bar, but the buffet bar at Elephant Bar on Sundays, like their Sunday brunch. No, but like I had a buddy in college kind of say this in this way, and I was like, you know what, dude, you're kind of right. Like, we're a group of good-looking dudes who, like, we can talk to other people, including women, and not like, we don't have that inability. Like, some guys just like freeze talking to women. Like, a lot of my friends in college and I, like, we didn't feel like that, so we were just like, why? Why do I need to go drop $100? Now, mind you, there were other guys in our fraternity who would go and drop fucking hundreds of dollars. Honestly, I kind of want to tell this one strip club story now, where it was right after I graduated. I was going out with like a couple of the younger guys, and like we were just getting fucked up in my apartment, and they're like, let's go to the strip club over in Maryland. I was like, why? It's like, well, because like you can like get lap dances and stuff. I'm like, all right, like I don't even know strip clubs well enough to know that there was like that rule in DC versus like Maryland versus Virginia. So we're going, and my buddy's like, oh, by the way, it's BYOB. So like, let's grab a fifth of vodka. So we roll up to this fucking strip club with a fifth of vodka. I'm buying Gatorades. I'm just sitting there like, I'm just gonna drink. Like, I'm not paying however much these strippers want for a lap dance. And one of the guys just is getting a lap dance and falls asleep while getting a lap dance. Like, is passed out drunk. Song after song after song goes by. And of course, what does this stripper do? Like, she's just been dancing on him. And after like 10 songs, she wakes him up and she's like, where's my money? Where's my money? You owe me for 10 songs. Where's my money? And it starts like spiraling into this thing. Like, the bouncer comes like, yo, you owe her money for all those dances. They take him over to the ATM, and dude, this fucking guy beelines it out of there. Like, just left. Like, literally. And we are not in like a safe neighborhood in Maryland, mind you. This dude was wearing like these really gross, like blue suede loafers, has just sprinted out. Like, the bouncers are coming up to us, be like, yo, you owe on behalf of your friend. And we're just playing dumb. We're like, we don't know that guy. Like, you can't make me pay for him. Like, I don't know him. The cops show up. Cops pull all of us outside. They're like, all right, like, we're not going to force you guys to pay, but like, can you like describe your friend? Like, do you know where he went? All of this stuff. And we literally, the description we gave is like, brown guy, curly hair. He's wearing blue suede shoes. And the cops look at each other. They look at us, and they're like, you need to find your friend, because like, he can't just be like wandering these streets dressed like that. And
These mean streets.
Dude, we call him for hours. It's like 4 a.m. We still haven't heard from him. We're back at my place at this point, and we're all just like, all right, fuck it, let's go to bed, and then we can deal with this tomorrow morning. Like, if we need to like go check hospitals, we will. 9 a.m. I get a phone call, text. Yo, can I come up to your room and like grab my Rolex that I hid in your safe and like my other stuff? And it's my buddy who like went missing last night. I was like, yes, get to my room right now. And I like corner him, like, what the fuck happened? Dude sprinted to a Chevron gas station, hid in the bushes, and called his girlfriend and woke her up, forced her to pick him up. And, like, honestly, this had nothing to do with anything other than the strip club. And I'm sorry for the rant and tangent, but I thought it was a funny story and worth sharing.
All right, so here's your prompt, related all the way back to Bitcoin.
Had he bought Bitcoin, then he would be a trillionaire.
Yeah, so that was in, I want to say May of 2015. So at May of 2015, the price of Bitcoin, I'm going to cry. So it was $230. And that is, funny enough, I think they were trying to get us to pay like $300 for all of his lap dances. So that was worth, all of those lap dances at that time were worth more than a whole Bitcoin. Wild. Strip clubs are shit coins. Don't go waste your money. Just stack sats. Don't be a fucking gway. Be respectful to women. Like, simple.
Solid. All right, what's next?
Do we want to rehash this Biden executive order now that we've all had some time to read it and go over it?
Yes, definitely. It's fucking bullshit.
One of the, one of my big takeaways on this Biden EO, it sounds like or not executive order, but like what they're planning to do is a build off of his executive order. I'm curious, and maybe I'm misinterpreting some of this, but it doesn't sound like anything is getting banned outright. I don't know why, but I'm burping and have hiccups, so excuse me if a burp comes through on this mic.
Jesus Christ. You know how to sell your presentation.
I'm interested to see like how this actually gets rolled out and is implemented. Like, let's not forget, like, we've been told a lot of things that, this administration is about to announce this thing, or they're about to announce that thing. And like, look, man, my student loan debt amount is still the same amount as it was the last rumor that spurred out about a potential payout. I cannot wait to talk to Jimmy Song about his recent articles. If you have not read Jimmy's articles, you need to, but I digress. Yeah, I'm curious if either of you feel like there is actual meat behind this, or if this is a furthering of the idea of like, let's explore and let's like better gather data about this. I'm curious if, like, maybe I'm misinterpreting this. Maybe there is a little bit more malice behind this, but if I'm being honest, if it's purely like a data collection sort of, hey, like, can we just have this data so we can like better understand it? To be honest, like, I'm on board with the caveat of like, can we also like have our people, like people who really understand what this data says, explain it to you, rather than you guys just getting it and then hiring a third party that maybe understands Bitcoin, but is probably incentivized to not, because they were hired by the federal government to essentially say so, or at least have two sides of this coin. Like, I think it's vitally important, if they're going to read all of this data and analyze it, to have someone in that room who understands it. And I volunteer Pete Rizzo as tribute. But I've just been talking, so I want to see P's elephant dick.
Oh, this microphone, yeah. I don't know, man. I don't think there is a way to. I think you are kind of bending over backwards to put a positive spin on this, or like a justification where this isn't just a continued attack on the quote unquote cryptocurrency space, and specifically Bitcoin. I mean, it relates back to the stuff we were talking about with New York. Like, people just genuinely do not understand why a proof of work system is important. And there are very strong incentives for people in positions of power to reinforce that misunderstanding and expand upon it, because proof of work systems undermine the control structures that these people and these organizations are using to try to drive the trajectory of humans in the way that they think is appropriate. And I think all of us fundamentally disagree with those strategies and those directions. But I think this is 100% the ongoing strategy and the build up to an even larger psyop to convince people that Bitcoin specifically is something that is bad and that should be viewed as an attack on the morals and social standards and whatever the fuck else people can cram into that negative argument. Yeah, I think this is nothing more than just it is surprising and disappointing, because the United States has historically been kind of agnostic towards Bitcoin, which ends up being positive towards Bitcoin. You know, I think this is the beginning of the or a major battle in the lead up to a battle in the then they fight us stage of Bitcoin hyper Bitcoinization. That's my take.
I wonder if like the lack of educational understanding throughout like the American educational system of both what is money, what is the incentive structure behind energy, and how are those two things related? Like, I think that's a very big thing within the Bitcoin ethos of understanding those things, and then it relates it back to Bitcoin. And for that reason, a lot of Bitcoiners kind of see that through line of why energy is very, very important in something like the creation of a hard sound money. But I'm curious if, the lack of that educational framework of even just like what is money in the context of like history and in the context of the US dollar. Because, like, let's be honest, it would be really hard for the country with the global reserve currency to explain to its own citizens that, hey, by the way, like, this like global reserve currency status thing, like, this is like new. This is not really like the normal thing that's been done in the world ever. And like each region has always had like its own form of currency, yada, yada, yada. Like, that is never explained. And I wonder if like part of it's because it would just diminish the credibility of the dollar on the global scale, or if it's just pure ignorance. But I kind of feel like it's impossible to understand those two concepts and how they intersect and then be against things like proof of work mining and Bitcoin.
Chris, go for it.
Now, you repeat the question, I guess, Q, there on that.
Like, is the lack of an educational framework around what is money, what is energy, and how do those two things correlate and are related to one another, is that maybe a larger cause as to why our politicians are not understanding the root cause of why, like, you guys are idiots and should not have control of our money?
Chris, you took too long to answer. I'm going to jump in here. No, that is absolutely not the reason why. The reason why is because they are, as I was saying a second ago, it's because they are in power and the systems that are in place benefit them specifically. We are not going to have an educational system that teaches people why, like how value and money and thus money are actually transacted, and the history of money, the history of transfer of value. Our educational system is disincentivized from educating people in that regard, right? Like the goals that we have and the goals of the people that control the educational system run in opposite directions. So I don't think it is fair to give people the benefit of the doubt and say like, well, maybe these politicians just weren't educated. That's not why. It's because they don't want to be educated. Who is it that said you can never is it you can never convince someone of a fact that their job or their job depends on them not knowing. Like they don't want to know and they don't care. So the veneer, the thin veneer of civility and even worse, the thin veneer of scientific rigor or honest engagement with these facts is frankly disgusting to me. Like, Bloomberg is reporting on this Biden whatever initiative, whatever the fuck it is, and saying like, they're quoting they're quoting people saying that they're going to maintain an open mind and they're going to be looking at all the different sides of this issue. The fuck they are. This is not about actually understanding what's going on. Again, it's about reinforcing and shoring up the systems of control that are designed to keep these people in power and to allow them to drive the majority of Americans like, the oxen before the cart. So no, they don't give a shit about education. They don't give a shit about educating themselves. Those that I actually think that a lot of the politicians understand exactly what's going on, or at least they understand the broad strokes of what's going on, and they are actively creating narratives to fight against their eventual loss of power. We're headed towards dark times, my friends.
Yeah, and P said that a lot more eloquently than I will. Basically, show me the incentives, I'll show the outcome. I think Janet Yellen in 2019, when she actually wasn't employed by the government or didn't have a government job in 2019, she had 7.1 million reasons to not understand energy or not understand money because she was getting paid by big banks to come in and give a 30-minute speech for $250,000, $150,000, $50,000. I think they completely understand the incentives. Their bank account's getting bigger in a nominal terms, and they'll gladly stay in power to keep doing so. Yeah.
All right, fine. I'm done playing devil's advocate and trying to help these politicians who have no spines.
Fuck these people.
Like I don't disagree with what you're saying. I'm just trying to maybe present a different framework.
I get it.
Or rationale. I agree, Chris. Fuck the lizard people. It's just, I mean, I can go on and on about all of these different political figures who get paid very, very handsomely to show up and talk and reassure the central bankers and all the different bankers that, oh no, don't you worry. You will be taken care of. We will not destroy the US dollar. You will still have a job. You will still be very rich. You will have your multiple vacation homes and your private island to escape to when society crumbles. But
I do want to soften what I said slightly, which is that it is not the case that anyone who is in a political role or is a bad actor or a bad person, right? Like, I wouldn't want anyone to take away from what I just said that they should stop trying to improve things and that they should. I certainly don't think that Bitcoiners should just completely cut off all ties to politicians and cut off all ties or stop investing in the regulatory and political endeavors that help to educate people, helping to educate politicians. I think that is incredibly important work, as we were talking about with Jason yesterday. So, I'm speaking I'm painting with a very broad brush when I make these comments, and I think we should be trying to fix the systems that exist. But I think that the people that are driving these policies, the people that are behind the scenes advocating for these things, and certainly Biden and certainly Yellen and certainly Lagarde and Carson's, like, they know exactly what's going on, and they present themselves as uninformed or interested parties as part of a facade. I think that, like, Yellen, like, acknowledging that inflation is higher than she thought it was going to be, I think that's absolute horseshit. I think she knew exactly what was going to happen, and again, that's just part of the ongoing psyop that is designed to blunt the will of as many people as possible. But I do think that we should continue trying.
So I don't disagree. Like we have to fight the fight regardless of what the outcomes in the short term look like. I'm curious if you guys, either of you think, and if you do think it should be done, like how would you enforce things like Janet Yellen coming out and saying, "Oh, I was wrong about inflation." Well, you know what? A lot of people are going to be struggling to put food on the table for their families because you were wrong. A lot of people are going to struggle to pay rent because you were gone or you were wrong. So who is responsible for that? Because right now these families are going to have to deal with this issue. And like, I want a head on a stake, plain and simple.
I don't think that's a realistic outcome. We are never going to get a head on a stake unless like the fucking United States economy or like the United States collapses. And honestly, I don't want the head on the stake myself. I want things to be better. But I'll admit, if a head on the stake is what's going to get us there, let's fucking go.
Well, like, I agree. Like, I want improvements to what we have now. But do you not think people taking responsibility for making poor decisions while they are in positions of power helps get us to a place where we have better things and a better system in place?
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to put it. I think so. People setting that example, taking accountability. You're absolutely right. That is a positive thing.
I really hope that didn't go on air, but yes, I'm eating a banana.
You were filleting that banana like 30 seconds ago.
Whoa. This is a children's show. But also fuck the Hexicans. But what does that responsibility look like? Is it we voice our concerns with our votes, but like someone like Janet Yellen isn't voted into office, and someone like Jerome Powell isn't voted into office. If anything, Jerome Powell was literally put in by both Trump and Biden at this point. So it's like, how do we get rid of this idiot? Like, do we need to go protest in front of his house? Like, is that actually a viable option? Like, I'm being serious.
I think it's an option. I don't know. I guess when you say viable, do you mean like effective? Because I think if people are to do it, I don't think anything would change. I hate to say that. I mean, I don't know. Q,
you think that? You really think that if people made it really uncomfortable for Janet Yellen to go to and from her house, or Jerome Powell to go to and from their house, nothing's going to change? Well, I'm not saying make it difficult, like something harmful to them or their family. I'm saying make it difficult, like there are crowds of people yelling, saying, "I lost my house because you made it seem like inflation wasn't a thing. I can't put food on the table for my family now because I can't afford the cost of food anymore." And like, I don't necessarily agree with you, Chris, that it wouldn't have a material effect. I think something could happen. Something could be as little as another apology or I resign. And I don't think either of those things actually have a net positive effect on the economy, at least in the short term. But I think it could instigate some changes to be made.
I don't know. I think the effectiveness of it would be about as big as Occupy Wall Street. I mean, I remember Occupy Wall Street happening. I remember hearing about it, but in terms of anything sweeping changes or changes in general, I really don't know if there was anything, to be honest. You're muted.
Bitcoin? Like, you could make a case that Satoshi's creation was a response to the same things that Occupy Wall Street was concerned about and upset over. And so based on that, like, maybe it does take a group of people taking the streets while another group of people are also like working on the next iteration of technology or advancement, or like really pushing forward change. But also, like, that's not necessarily the best example, because as I talk it out, it's like Bitcoin has not reached a mass adoption. We're still having the same issues that Occupy Wall Street was fighting and protesting over. So maybe you are right. Maybe it does lead to nothing, but
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Bitcoin's a direct relation to that. I mean, what's the on the Genesis block? '03 January 2009. Chancellor begins bailout of second bailout of banks. Like that's literally written into it. I think it was literally a stateless money. Is it Hayek that says, we will only take the power away from the government if we do it in some sly roundabout way? Is that Hayek? Am I wrong? I think that's the quote from Hayek. I'll look it up, but yeah.
All right, where do we go from here?
I gotta say, man, I don't know how you fucking people intermittently fast. I've been trying to do it, and by trying, I mean I've just been skipping breakfast. But that's in my mind, that's all you do when you intermittently fast is you skip breakfast. It's so damn hard. Oh my god. Um, let's talk for a second about like something maybe in a more positive light or lens. I'm gonna put UP on the spot. We talk a lot about the developments we're seeing as Bitcoin as a payment layer, the developments out of Lightning. Is there any aspect of Bitcoin, the technology itself, that has you excited or that you're paying close attention to as it gets further developed? I know that you're well versed in all of this, so that's why I'm putting you on the spot, and I don't feel bad.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of technologies that are being developed right now for Bitcoin on Bitcoin that are extremely promising and extremely exciting. I think that the addition of Taproot and Schnorr signatures is huge. It opens up the door for a lot of really interesting and important. I don't know what the right word is, but systems that can be that integrate with Bitcoin or that use Bitcoin directly in more private ways, in more flexible ways. I think that there are some really interesting things that are being, developed and ironed out. Frost, Musig, these are technologies around creating multi-sig transactions that will empower a lot of different things on Bitcoin. I think specifically, I'm really excited about the work that is being done by Block and / Spiral / that the whole portfolio of entities that are part of that organization, Cash App, around sort of the open source hardware wallet, open source mining technologies. I think that is going to be a huge thing for Bitcoin adoption and for removing some of the bottlenecks that we currently see around production and also, education and getting Bitcoin into the hands of as many people as possible in the most sovereign way possible. I think that, even now, I was joking about this, I don't know, last week at some point, but, it used to be the case that if you wanted to securely store your Bitcoin, you had to, you went and you got a printer, then you tore the Wi-Fi card out of that printer, then you printed a paper wallet, then you destroyed that printer, then you killed everyone who saw you buy the printer. Like it used to be so extreme, right? But a lot of people still did it. And we're now at a point where you can attain levels of security and privacy that are infinitely more easy. And they don't require you to read through, Bitcoin talk forums for hours in order to get there. And I think that as we move, further and further down the timeline of hyper Bitcoinization, one of the most important things is making those very important aspects of Bitcoin, the decentralization, the, radical financial responsibility, the security, making those things more approachable to more people is one of the most important things you can be doing. So that was a very long-winded answer and kind of meandering, but I think I'm the short version is I am most excited about some of the work that is being done by Block around the open source hardware wallet and the making ASICs more easily produced.
Do you think that, Block is a US based company? I know I believe they are international, although I don't think Cash App is available like in every country. So I'm curious if something like making these miners much cheaper, if that's going to help unlock things globally or more locally within the US, in your opinion.
In order to answer that, I feel like I would have to have a more nuanced understanding of exactly what they are, like what the sort of timeline and plan is for the projects they're working on, and I don't, unfortunately. I think that the work that they are doing is very openly and honestly trying to improve the Bitcoin ecosystem. So I think they're going to do everything that they can to bring it to much larger than a US audience. Now, whether or not that starts in the US and kind of broadens out from there, I'm not sure.
All right, I don't care anymore. Wait, you can't buy Bitcoin on Strike or Cash App in New York?
Yeah, they don't have bit licenses, dude. I think it's like only like Gemini and a couple other platforms. I'm not even sure if Coinbase has one, to be honest. But yeah, Cash App and Strike. That was the funny tweet like a while ago. They were saying like you can now withdraw Lightning payments to your wallet. Cash App announced, and someone from New York's like, when can you buy in New York? And they're like, oh, sorry, it's in the fine print. New York, we're not supporting still. So like 49 states, I think.
Yeah, this is what I was saying. Like the people of New York are getting utterly fucked.
Wow.
And it's really sad.
I'm not sure. I don't want to misspeak, but I know Gemini has one of the licenses. I'm not even sure if Swan you can, but I could be wrong. I don't want to misspeak.
Can someone in the chat who lives in New York State like tell us how you buy Bitcoin, please? Or like, I don't,
peer to peer, baby. Go to meetups, exchange cash.
But that's not feasible for every person. And you're talking about one of the biggest cities in the world.
I know, but that's why, like, I mean, ultimately there is an argument to be made that all these, exchanges, systems, basically in opposition to what I was just saying. Well, not necessarily, but I think it is. This is why it is so important that we are exploring building technologies that allow people in, what's the right word? Adversarial environments to buy and use Bitcoin effectively. I mean, if we think New York is bad, like we're all very US centric, which is embarrassing for me personally most of the time, because that's just where I live and I don't have enough time in the day to explore all the different places and the ways that Bitcoin is being used. Hashtag go watch Oslo Freedom Forum. It was fucking amazing. I'm part of the way through watching all the segments. I think that is the I want to make sure nobody from our organization is listening, but I think that Oslo Freedom Forum is the highest signal conference in existence around Bitcoin. The Bitcoin conference, extremely high signal, but Oslo Freedom Forum is focused on, as the name would suggest, financial and all other aspects of freedom, and Bitcoin just happens to be the most effective way to provide that for many people. So take lessons from the sessions at Oslo Freedom Forum, come to understand how people in truly oppressive regimes use Bitcoin, transact in Bitcoin, store Bitcoin. And if people in, places all over the world can do it, in countries where the regime is actually trying to kill you all the time, well, maybe not all the time, but you get what I'm saying. People in New York can definitely figure it out.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I think Gladstein always mentions, though, I know he obviously has a big forefront and obviously the Oslo Freedom Forum, working with the Human Rights Foundation and such. But he said that it's interesting that in that group, they don't consider money as one of the ways to escape. I mean, obviously he's bringing that forward, but I remember in his spaces, he was saying you would think in the freedom community, or at least the people escaping authoritarian regimes, would have much higher adoption rates of Bitcoin. He said it was only like 2.5% and 3%, while if you're thinking globally, 1.5 to 2%, yes, it's higher, but you would think it would be like 20, 30, at least myself. I would think it'd be much, much higher, the adoption rate. I know that I think he said there was like 75 to 100 Bitcoiners that were there, obviously putting on great seminars. We hosted it at Bitcoin Magazine on our YouTube channel. You can check it out there, also on Rumble. Or you can also check it out on their page as well. But yeah, no, really great high signal content. And I definitely think it's important. And I think they're more adept to understanding Bitcoin and understanding the importance and understanding a money that you can't have shut down. I mean, in his book alone, Check Your Financial Privilege, I know Q's brought it up multiple times in the past. Just hearing some of the stories of people in like Afghanistan, Ethiopia, like countries all over the world where it's much stricter and authoritarian. I'd love to hear, I guess, even more stories. I know it's hard, but like it'd be interesting to hear stories out of like North Korea, like Yuami, what's her name? Yuami Park. But yeah, and she loves Bitcoin. She understands it. She understands the importance for that and freedom.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a growing need for sound money around the world, um, and there's a growing need for that domestically here in the United States as well. I think the reason we don't feel it as much as you mentioned, Chris, as we've talked about ad nauseum on this show, and is at this point, if you're in Bitcoin and you don't realize the privilege that developed nations have with the currency that we've been using, whether you have the pound, even the euro, I'll give it to you, or the dollar. Like there's a privilege that comes with having a currency that the rest of the world relies on, pegs their own currency against. And while we feel inflation worse than ever before in any of our lifetimes, except for the 100-year-old P, we're starting to see like we have 8% inflation, but then another country that has US dollars in their reserves has greater inflation because their country is inflating their own currency already. But the thing they're backing their currency on is also inflating at the same time that their own currency is inflating. And this gets lost on a lot of Americans because there's literally nothing that backs the US dollar other than a promise that like this is worth something. Like that's it. That's the only thing that backs it. And yes, the military. But most other countries have some sort of like US dollar reserve or even like gold. Iran is a perfect example of a country that has like gold and dollars on reserve, but they continue to print in such excess that they have over 100% inflation over 2 years now. And I would say like maybe like 3 or 4 years ago is when you really started to see the conversation out of Iran about Bitcoin and just like this is being used. Like if you go to a pizza parlor, you can buy pizza with Bitcoin. It's starting to turn into like a viable like solution to the inflation that Iran had been dealing with for some time. So like I truly hope it doesn't have to get that bad around the world. But unfortunately, I think it will until these changes get made.
You're making hand motions as if
Because the
something.
camera's like literally on me the whole time, but I auto default to like look down at you guys for your reaction. But then like if no one talks, like the camera's just staring at me. So at this point now, I'm just gonna do like a song and dance whenever I stop talking. Because
No.
honestly, Pete, I admire the
dancing.
fact that you have like, and I'm trying to get better at this. Like you always pause to absorb what is being said and are thoughtful about your responses. Meanwhile, like I can literally talk for days nonstop to the wall behind me without realizing that I've just been talking to a wall for 3 days straight.
I think you and I haven't hung out quite enough in person. No one has ever accused me of not talking enough.
No,
Thank
no,
you.
I'm
Thank
not
you.
saying
I
you
will
don't
take the
talk enough.
compliment.
I'm saying you have a very thoughtful pause, which is something that I want to work on of like not just immediately responding. So I'm paying you a compliment, you talkative buffoon.
That was a pause for effect. I also am completely distracted by the fact like I can't sit still. It's just I'm hyperactive as fuck. And so I'm constantly like jiggling my leg or my body or something, even when it looks like I'm sitting still. And normally you can't detect it because, I have a focused, I'm thinking, I'm talking. But unfortunately I have a shock mount on my monitor or on my mic. And so you can see that's jiggling around because I'm just like moving my legs around constantly. It's very professional. Anyway, what else we got? We only have like 3 minutes until the incredible, illustrious Jimmy Song joins us.
Yeah.
So I guess you know what time it is then, right?
Oh God, here it comes. Hit us with it. That was me.
Buy your tickets to Bitcoin 2023 so I can keep my fucking job, guys. Like seriously, I like my job. I know you like listening to me because that's why you're listening to us. And they've told Chris and I that we did not sell enough tickets to Bitcoin 2022, but they liked our personality. So that's why we're still here on a very, very short leash. Just buy the tickets, guys. Do it.
What a Fiat response. They liked our personality. That's why they kept us around. We need to sell more tickets.
No.
All about the monies.
No, fuck that. You should buy a ticket because some of the best conversations that happen in the space happen at the Bitcoin conference. It is a smorgasbord. It's Bitcoin, as you say, it's Bitcoin Disneyland. It's a smorgasbord of incredible conversations, incredible panels. We had, 5 different stages, something for everyone. I'm most proud of the open source stage, but all the stages had incredible content on them, and you don't want to miss it. It's going to be great.
Use promo code FOMO. Get 10% off of everything in the Bitcoin Magazine store. Unfortunately, yes, we have locked up and accepted all of our orders for the Bitcoin Pizza Day shirt. This was an exclusive drop. You snoozed and you lost. So we will let y'all know when the next exclusive drop comes out, but you missed the last one. Feel free to use promo code FOMO to get any of the swag that's still available. I know we're wrapping up on Bitcoin 2022 swag as well. We're almost done with some of that. So lock it in now before it's all gone. And of course, Bitcoin Day Charlotte is coming up. Chris, if you want to tell everyone about that.
Yeah, so Bitcoin Day Charlotte. So I guess I'll provide some nuance for this. So Bitcoin Day it should be called Bitcoin Days. So they're traveling around the country. They've already been to Sioux Falls. They've been to Oklahoma City. They're going to Charlotte next. It's basically a single day. It's like a mini conference is the best way to describe it. It starts early. I think it starts at like 7 a.m. or 7:30. It's going to be kicked off in Charlotte, North Carolina. I will be in attendance. I'll actually be moderating a panel talking about Bitcoin communities and community building. So really excited for that. There'll be many other talks. There'll be about Bitcoin and its adoption in trusts. So just many great panels. There'll be a mining panel, a lightning panel, a lot of on-hand stuff. Basically, it's a whole day-long thing. And then you go to the bar afterwards, hang out, get to meet people, shake hands. But yeah, they're traveling around the country. They're going to various different events. You can go to bitcoinday.io in order to procure your tickets. That will be for the Charlotte event. It will be next Saturday. So June 11th, I believe. June 11th. So really looking forward to that. I'll meet you guys there. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, dude, Chris is actually going to be moderating a panel. Yeah. He's going to be in front of the cameras. You excited? You nervous? Just imagine everyone's wearing their underwear and you'll be fine.
No, I'm not too nervous. I think I'm ready. I got one person from BM will also be on the panel. So if things go south, I can just make a joke about him and keep it rolling.
Yeah, just throw Craig under the bus.
All right. Looks like Jimmy just got here. So do you want to send us to a quick commercial break, Q?
Hang around, guys. You're not going to want to miss this combo with Jimmy Song. Like, I don't need to tell you anything more than that, but like, you do not want to miss the song sheet of the week. We are back. Thank you for sticking around through that commercial break, and we are joined by none other than Jimmy Song. Jimmy, welcome back. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Just came back from Oslo, feeling feeling pretty good. Got to prep for another week of stuff here in Oslo with consensus and all that. So, it just never stops. That's how it is.
Love that. Love the hustle and love, you're helping to preach the good word of Satoshi to those who need to hear it. Do you mind sharing maybe some of your experience out of Oslo?
Yeah, so the Oslo Freedom Forum was, as usual, pretty amazing. There's a lot of human rights activists, and they had the Bitcoin stuff sort of integrated with everything instead of a separate track like they did in Miami back in, I think it was October or September of last year. It was integrated into everything. So we had panels that would go right after like a freedom panel, and then we'll talk about Bitcoin and monetary stuff, and transition to another one or whatever. It was really good. A lot of human rights activists do have monetary problems, and I got to go and speak with a lot of them. I found out about what it's like to be a human rights activist. And I didn't realize, for example, that for a lot of them, like, talking about money is very, like, it's a sensitive thing, because they're activists, and the first thing that they get accused of is, oh, you're doing this because you're a scammer and you're trying to make money or something like that. So like, for them, it's hard to go and ask for money or for help on any of this stuff. And they're not financial experts by any means. And they don't know necessarily like what the best practices are on any of this stuff. So for them, it's a very needed education, because their governments oftentimes will oppress them and make it very difficult for them to do anything that they want to do financially. Working with them and trying to help them understand what options they have, especially with respect to Bitcoin, was a really great experience. And learning about how they're using it is also very affirming for the rest of us that are in Bitcoin, because we're like, hey, this is why we're doing it, because we're bringing human freedom to all of these places, and this is what it looks like.
What one of my favorite things in our very first conversation after you had finished up writing the book, oh my God, I'm spacing on the book that all of you guys collaborated on, but you shared some of the things that you learned during that collaborative process. I'm curious, like, what was something you learned in Oslo that maybe going in you weren't aware of?
Well, a lot of these activists are like, they don't choose to be activists. That's like the thing that struck me a little bit. At least here in the US, if you want to be an activist, there's almost like a path, right? Like you go and become a community organizer or something, and you sort of advocate for certain things, and there's sort of like a well-trodden path to being an activist on something. For the vast majority of these human rights activists, they didn't choose to do that. It's that their government demonized them in some way, and this was what they had to do in order to survive. And they realized, okay, if I want to protect my friends and family, I'm going to have to go and do something like that. So, like, in a sense, a lot of this was thrust on them rather than them like going out and saying, oh, I'm going to be an advocate for this or that. They're almost all kind of reluctant, and it's a very interesting thing to see, because many of them are exiled from their home countries. Their governments don't like them. A lot of them are not even like necessarily like well-practiced speakers or anything like that. They just sort of they just tell their story because their stories are just so crazy. Like one of the guys I met, Leopoldo, he he was in prison in Venezuela for like 7 years, right? Like and it was because he was becoming more popular, and he had won a race as mayor and all this other stuff, and the people in power didn't want him to get that popular, so they threw him in prison. It's just it's kind of crazy how things like that are. So yeah, that was eye-opening and very interesting for me. The issue, it's almost like the government chooses you to be the activist by oppressing you, not like you volunteering.
I'm curious because when Gladstein was kind of explaining this conference, like it's not just a Bitcoin conference, it's a conference for humanitarian efforts. And Gladstein being one of the biggest proponents of Bitcoin, hopefully leading to prosperity to some of these nations and regions of the world. I'm curious what some of the pushback you were hearing in Oslo this time around was around.
With respect to Bitcoin, you mean?
Yes.
Generally, the people, if they express anything at all, it's the pushback they get is, oh, like it's too volatile or something like that. And they're more, it's more out of ignorance about like Bitcoin's long-term monetary properties and stuff like that. I like, honestly though, most of the time we just want something that works. And as long as they can get donations and get money to the people that they need to get it to, that's their big thing that they're trying to get. For them, it's a utility thing, and if it doesn't work kind of the way like that they need it to, then they'll let us know, right? Like, it's okay, well, we need to convert this money, and we can't have these people knowing about it. How do we do that? we have to be like, okay, well, you could do this, and a lot of the pushback is around just not knowing what options are available.
Do you feel like this type of an event can help lead to other regions of the world that maybe need Bitcoin more than a place like America to push for adoption, whether it be on a government controlled level or maybe from a ground up with citizens using it? Like, do you think that this will have that type of an effect, which I believe was the goal of events like this?
Yeah, I think it already is. I mean, like, outside of the Western world, Bitcoin is it's huge already, right? Like, for people that want to send money abroad and stuff like that, it's way better than Western Union or whatever, and it settles much faster, and you can do it on weekends and holidays and all that. So they, for the most part, that sort of narrative is already developed, and it continues to develop as we watch the space. Yeah, I mean, for like, I don't know if governments adopting it will matter quite as much for the human rights activists. For the most part, they're trying to get around like the government restrictions. So many of these people are labeled extremists and terrorists by their home governments, and this is what they have to deal with. They're basically financially canceled, and they have to figure out ways around it. And Bitcoin happens to be a great tool for that. So now, is this going to cause more adoption on a global scale? Maybe. We know that like black markets in a lot of these places are thriving, and if Bitcoin becomes sort of like the de facto black market currency right now, that's more or less the US dollar. I think that would be a huge boon to Bitcoin. Now, is that going to happen anytime soon? I don't know, but I think there's definitely hope in that direction.
Before I take us to the song sheets, I wanted to either let P ask anything regarding Oslo or Jimmy give you the opportunity to share any thoughts, any more thoughts about Oslo and the experience you had there?
What was the most exciting thing that you ate there? I'm always impressed by the veracity with which you can tear into Wagyu beef.
I'm glad you asked that question, because I had something that not many people have had, which was whale. I got to eat
No
whale.
shit.
So I had whale sashimi and whale steak while I was there. And Norway is one of 3 countries in the world where you can actually eat whale. And
Whoa.
I got to try it. So whale sashimi is kind of like a almost like a beefier version of tuna sashimi. It's like darker, almost the meat. So it's interesting. I enjoyed it.
That's crazy. I said veracity, I meant ferocity. What is the most what's the largest size steak you've eaten in one single sitting?
Ever?
Yeah.
The 72-ounce steak at the Big Texan in Amarillo. I've done that twice. So
You've done it twice? What?
Oh my God.
Jimmy, that's
well,
Really?
and every time I pass through there, that's what I want to do, is eat the 72-ounce steaks, because it's pretty awesome.
That's incredible. I love that most people that would be like a goal they would, shoot to attain once in life. And you were like, yeah, no,
I've done it twice.
I can do better.
Like, are you at this point now just like, yeah, no, I could eat 6 pounds of a steak and not worry about it. I can go on with my day.
Oh, I mean, to be fair, that's like 4 pounds and 4.5 pounds or whatever.
Okay.
That's a lot of food, but it's, if you don't eat for a day, that's you could do it. I think most people can. The best eating challenge people are actually pretty skinny and quite fit, and the reason is because they train their bodies to store a lot of the food. You can kind of make your body like process all of that and not have to eat for a while. And that's a way in which you can eat enormous quantities. Most of them fast for days after their eating contest, by the way.
You missed earlier when I was venting about the fact that I've tried to start intermittently fasting, and only because it's just like, oh, I could skip breakfast and I'll call it intermittent fasting. And it sucks and I hate it and I don't like it. I'm definitely I need to eat 5 meals a day, like 5 full meals.
Well, you need to eat a lot more animal fat and overeat when you do eat, so that you get used to sort of like feeling full, and that will keep you from wanting to eat. You probably have a very different relationship with food than somebody that does intermittent fasting. For a lot of people, they eat because they're bored, or they want to munch on something, or because they're feeling lonely or feel like depressed or whatever. Those are the wrong reasons to eat. The reason to eat is to nourish yourself, and getting to the point where that's the only time you eat, to nourish yourself, that would be the ideal in a good relationship with food. So it takes time to rebuild your relationship. Fasting and having it suck is part of that deal. Like it's kind of like exercising. It's gonna suck at first, but it gets better as you get better.
I want to now switch the gears to the first of the Bitcoin song sheets that I wanted to discuss with you. This is one that I've looked forward to discussing with you now for 2 weeks, but how education has become a fountain of fiat values. Literally, the first sentence says it all. College is a scam. What prompted you to go down this path, and then talk a little bit about your motivations to make such a direct statement?
Yeah, I've been well, I wanted to write on fiat education, and I realized that the heart of it is college, because we could talk about K through 12 and all that too, but really all of that is preparing you to go to college, right? Like that's essentially the goal of K to 12 education these days, is to get you into college. And once you're in college, well, what are you doing? You're paying a tremendous amount of money, supposedly to get skills that you don't actually use afterwards. So really what college is at this point is an indicator of how smart you are and not any skills that you might have. And the only reason it's an indicator of how smart you are is because the college entrance exams essentially test your IQ, and that's how they figure out whether or not you're going to be entering that school. So, it's a very expensive way to sort people and find good employees or whatever, but that's essentially what the college system has turned into. On the other side, like for consumers, right, like the people that are actually going to college, they've been sold a whole bag of lies about like what college is and how it's so beneficial and all this other stuff. And it really comes down to this confusing correlation with causation thing that I wrote about in the article, where, previously it was mostly just for the upper class. So therefore, of course, college graduates had a higher income than non-college graduates, because upper class children are going to have higher incomes than middle and lower class children. But they somehow turned that from a class issue into an education issue. Instead of just admitting, okay, well, if you're born rich, then you're likely to be richer because you have parents that provided a lot more stuff for you. Instead of saying that was the reason, it was, no, it's this college education thing. That's the real reason. So there was a little bit of a bait and switch, or like blaming something, or putting this up as the great equalizer when it actually wasn't. And we have lots and lots of people in enormous amounts of student debt as a result of it. And it's an unfortunate situation that continues to get worse.
All right, sorry. I feel a lot attacked, if I'm being quite honest with you.
What? Why?
No, like, you're not wrong that this incentive structure has created this necessity to convince everyone of a certain income level or from a certain class that this education is a necessity to grow within the economy. I'm curious though, and I don't believe, if I'm remembering the article correctly, I don't believe you really mentioned too much about, or actually you do, like federal loans and what effect that has on like the insane cost that we have.
Yeah, the reason why the cost of college has gone up is because they've been subsidized through student loans.
Yeah, it's so fucked up.
Yeah, and they give it to these 18-year-olds have no idea, right? Like they don't have any education about this stuff. They don't even really know where the loans come from. It just comes from the sky as far as they can tell, and it's handed out like Santa Claus's gifts or something. They don't understand where the money comes from. It's printed ex nihilo for their quote unquote education. Really, it's a subsidy to these colleges, which are essentially indoctrination camps for having whatever correct opinion that they want you to have. So I point that out in the article, how tuition has gone up significantly, and almost all of that money has gone not even into like professors or classrooms. It's gone into mostly administrators and rent-seeking professionals. Basically, you might have like some diversity coordinator of the law school L2s or something. Like you have vice deans of all kinds of random things. They don't necessarily do anything like beneficial to the students, but they do add so check some boxes for compliance reasons, because of course, they want to make sure that they're checking every box that the government gives them as far as, accreditation and things like that. So it becomes this game where they end up serving the people that pay them. And it's somewhat the students, because not all of your tuition is paid through student loans. But it's also the government. So, like anything where you're a Cantillon beneficiary, you're going to serve the people that pay you, and that's the federal government. And all of these institutions, like, what are the values that they, put out? It's, you have to be a good citizen, and you have to support the government, and you have to support education in particular, and show how everyone that hasn't gone to college is an idiot and you're superior to them and all this other stuff. It's all these lies to get you to be in their frame of reference, in their the mentality that they want you to be in, which is very much from fiat money.
I think you are, in my opinion, I think you're right on like 90% of everything you say in this article. I think that there are, and I especially love the point you just made, that who would have thought that when you print money out of nothing and then inject it into a system, all you end up doing is increasing the cost for those who can't attain that injected cash. Like it seems so black and white that if you are creating this gigantic federal loan system, obviously you are simply going to increase the cost of education. And I think that's something that it's not really talked about very often. I think that there are some advantages, or there are some useful things about college. I think basically the only one is there something that you can get very easily in different ways, but it's like the socialization, like going away to college, being around all these people. If you go to, depending on the college you go to, there is a large concentration of different types of people, and you can kind of figure out, who you want to be and what you want to do. That, in my opinion, is one of the only benefits of college. That, and then of course, as you speak to, you basically you get the social cachet of being able to say, like, I went to Yale, and everybody's oh, shit, you must know some stuff, which is bullshit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not like there are no benefits. There are plenty of benefits to going to college, right? Like you make friends, you learn how to socialize. Maybe you even learn a thing or two. I don't know. And you certainly make a lot of contacts that you're going to use for the rest of your life and so on. But is it worth the money that you're paying? Right? Like
No,
that's a real question that you have to ask. There are online classes that I've taken, that, a couple $1,000s, and you get a lot of the same networking and like, peers, and getting to know people, and people pushing you, and you actually learning something that, costs way less than, something like college. Yet this outdated mode of learning, or supposed learning has continues because of fiat money, because of the Cantillon effects, because of all the rent seekers, because there's a momentum that rent seekers sort of add to this thing where it just can't get stopped, because they're using this Cantillon effect to their advantage to keep it going, whether they're effective or not. And I think what's fairly clear, given the dropout rates and the number of people that actually don't end up graduating in 6 years, which is like a third of all people that enter college don't graduate in 6 years, which is insane, right? Like those are people saddled with loans and don't have anything to show for it. And that you're failing all of those people. And guess what? They're disproportionately from the poor and middle class. And like upper class people, they'll graduate in 6 years, right? Like that's fine. But the people that it hurts, it's always the poor people, the middle class people, and they get screwed out of their money. Now they're saddled with debt, and now they have to, basically use the rest of their life to pay off this huge albatross of a student loan. and that's very tragic to me. That sort of like the hidden costs of keeping this bureaucratic system going, which isn't very efficient, where most people don't learn nearly that much, and it's just bloated for what it gives. But because of sort of like the prestige and the money that's made available through student loans, where you can afford something more, as long as it fits this criteria, that's way more because of these loans than you would otherwise. Like, people aren't nearly as price sensitive, and you get these weird effects.
There's a line in your article. You say government granted itself a monopoly on education, and like most things it does with no competition, it screwed it up worse than Hollywood screws up child actors. The monopoly persists because of the momentum of bureaucracy funded by the money printer. I think that's such a poignant way of putting it.
Yeah, I there's a I don't know. At some point, maybe I should write about this, but there's this really cool French philosopher named Jacques Ellul, who wrote a lot about the technological society and propaganda and a bunch of other stuff. But one of the things that he says is that once like a bureaucracy or something like that gets going, it has its own momentum. Like, no one needs to drive it at all. It'll just sort of go on its own, and it'll sort of consume everything in its path and make everybody conform to it, whether you want to or not, because of the momentum behind it. Colleges, pretty much every sort of industrial complex, even stuff like the deep state that we talk about, it all has the same property, where it's grown so big and bloated that anything that enters that system is forced to be conformed to it in that way. And like, the only thing that could kill it is you gotta stop feeding the beast. And it almost always has to be abruptly challenged. And this is this is what Bitcoin represents for me.
I think we've talked about this before in Clubhouse, but I actually helped build the earliest coding boot camps in the SF Bay Area. And it was really, really interesting being part of that movement and seeing how the narrative around them shifted. At first people were like, you can't possibly like educate people to the point where they're going to be productive members of society. And it was like, people were very threatened by it. And then it was like, oh no, like, our graduates, would, outcompete people from four-year colleges to work at places like Amazon and Google and all these other places. And then it was like, oh wow, that's that, maybe there are, specific skills that can be taught very quickly for people that are super motivated and extremely intelligent. And it was like, okay. And then it just started to get co-opted by these existing sort of bureaucratic systems and like VC money. And, over time shifted over to be just sort of in my opinion, a pale shadow of what it was, for the first half decade.
I'm sure fiat money has corrupted it somehow. If you're getting VC investment, that's for certain. But even with like I'm sure there are loan programs or something like that like let certain people in that probably shouldn't get in and stuff like that. I mean, this,
and there are still some good ones out there, I will say.
I'm sure there are. Just like there are good colleges out there too. But there's something about like the corrupting nature of fiat money. It just makes everything worse. It has this tendency to add bureaucracy, add government, add sort of incompetence to it, and allow for a lot more rent seeking, which ultimately hurts whatever the end product is. And so that some people can make money without doing anything.
I'm curious, like, look, I'll admit, not only do I have student loan debt from attending undergraduate university that I'm still working on paying off, but Papa Biden, just literally sign it. Just get rid of it for me, please. Besides that, I also actually, funny enough, did attend one of these like coding boot camps. And in the coding boot camp, they have an interesting, most of them do now, especially, called an income share agreement, where instead of like a traditional loan, it's based strictly on when you get employment and what your salary is out of employment. And they get 10% of your salary with a cap on like maximum amount you would have to pay, maximum amount of years you're under sort of this. Like if you're unable to find a job for a predetermined number of time, like you're not paying while you're unemployed, etc. I'm curious if that feeds into a better incentive structure and system so that students are more focused on, and this is kind of leads into the next phase of the conversation that I wanted to discuss with you, is like that correlation between, all right, if I'm going to just go major in art history, but I need to take out 200K, that probably isn't going to pay off in the long run versus like, oh, you want to go into computer engineering? Dude, you know what? Like you want $250,000 loan? Fine. You'll pay that off in like 4 years. So I'm curious if something like an income share agreement could, while it's still rooted in fiat, could maybe help shift the incentive structure, in your opinion.
Yeah, all of these schemes, whether it's loans or income sharing or whatever, it's an attempt to bring consumption forward, right? And the consumption good here is, a class or an education or whatever. They want these things to grow, and this happens whenever you add VC money. Is they want you to grow at all costs. The people that, at least initially, I imagine, you tell me if I'm wrong, came into these boot camps, they just paid for it, right? Like it was, okay, it's going to cost, $15,000, you're going to pay us, and then we're going to teach you, and that's it. And they saved up for it. They got their friends and family to pay for it, or they, like whatever, like that's probably how it happened.
Yeah,
And that's
exactly right.
that's way more motivating, right? Because then now it's like you've paid for it, you've already earned this money, or earned from the goodwill of your friends or family or whatever, and you have paid somebody. Now you want a return on whatever you paid them. It's a transaction where you pay for the class and the class has to teach you something. Once you add this like secondary thing of loans, or we'll pay it back later, or promises in the future, or I don't know, the income share agreement sounds like semi-slavery over a period of time until you pay it back or something like that. Now it becomes sort of like you consume first and you have to pay it back later. And the reason why that doesn't work is something that any parent knows. If your kid wants a toy, what's better? If they have to go and save up for the toy and then go buy the toy, or you buy it for them and you make them do chores every week because of the toy for the next 6 months or something like that. Well, the former, they're going to feel much better because they earned it. The latter, they're going to just get resentful of you. And I think this is the subtle thing about like creating credit and getting into debt, is that if you use debt, you're essentially bringing consumption forward. And that's why I call fiat education like a consumer good. You're consuming now and having to pay it off later. Whereas if you save and then go to college, that's a very different thing. Or save and then go to coding boot camp or whatever. Now, is like an income share agreement better than like having to pay off a large loan later? I don't know, maybe. But I just don't think this consumption, bringing consumption forward and having to pay it off later thing, I don't think it's healthy for anybody, and it breeds resentment. I'm sure like pretty much everyone that has student loans is very resentful of the terms of those loans and everything else. So it's much better if you save and then you pay for it, and then then you're much more motivated to get everything out of it. If you pay $20,000, right, of your own money to go to college, right, which is way less than the actual tuition of college, you're going to be way more motivated to go to class and learn something and make sure that you get a return on that. But if Uncle Sam gives you a student loan and it's like, well, maybe Biden will get rid of it, or maybe some future president will get rid of it. like you have much less skin in the game.
I'm curious if the increasing cost of college, like you discussed the correlation between your salary and your starting salary and your education has essentially diminished over time. Like when I went to college, it was like you have to go to college, otherwise you're not going to get a job. But as I kind of look back now, it's like, no, not really. I was part of the last generation that could maybe be convincingly told that lie and believed that lie.
Mm.
So I'm curious if where does the fault fall on the decreasing correlation between your starting salary and the increasing cost of your college education?
Well, the thing is, like, it was never really, especially because of the increasing importance of status. It used to be that you would go to a job to make money. You could come out of high school, go to a trade school for 2 years and become like a welder and make six figures, right? Like that, you could do that right now. You could do something similar as an electrician or an auto mechanic or any number of things. But those jobs don't have nearly the prestige that going to a 4-year college does. And that's a really odd thing, because jobs are evaluated not necessarily on how much they pay, but on what degrees are required to get into them, which is very strange. So people prefer an office job that pays 50K because it requires like a college degree, versus something like welding, which pays double, but it's considered blue collar, right? Like it's such a strange thing, and it comes back to this idea that people want something for nothing. They want to be part of the Cantillon hierarchy. They want to do as little work as possible, do essentially BS work and make money rather than actually make something. Because they see welding, it's like, oh, well, you actually have to make welds, and that could be hard. And I don't want to do that. I'd rather sit in an office and play solitaire on my computer pretending to work, like that's where they sort of like dream of doing these things. There's so many college graduates that like the numbers were never going to support like college graduates making more money than non-college graduates forever. And I think we've definitely seen that. But as I said, like college is just sort of a class thing, and like almost every upper class person goes to college, and few people from the lower classes go. But like it's they make it out to be this path to become upperly mobile, but in actuality, it's your family background and how much money you had before that's going to determine that way more. So in a sense, it's been presented kind of like cholesterol as the explanation for everything, when it actually doesn't explain much at all.
Sorry, sometimes I lose which of my 20 different screens are the actual Zoom chat. Um, like, look, we're shitting on colleges, we're shitting on the Fiat system, but I give you a lot of credit. Like, you don't just shit on it and be like, yeah, we're fucked. You also introduce what education can look like on the Bitcoin standard. Let's change the script and like maybe everyone could use a dash of hopium. It's Friday.
Mm.
What does education look like under a Bitcoin standard to Jimmy's Hong?
I think it looks way more like private tutoring, boot camps, stuff like that. I would love to see more private tutoring come back. And unfortunately, like the sort of flavor of private tutoring that's out in the world today is let's make sure that my kid gets a good score on the SATs, not at all about, okay, let's get this kid all of the knowledge that they want about the topic that they're interested in. So parents are sort of in that Fiat mentality as well. Instead of trying to train their child to know more, they're playing to these tests essentially, or we just want to get him into, or get him or her into a really good university, and then it's the focus is completely off, right? Like they're playing into the system as well. So we definitely have that aspect, which really needs to change, where people's goals for education are very different. Right now, it is essentially get into college, and then once you've gotten into college, to graduate, and once you've graduated, then you have this credential that you can use for the rest of your life. Instead, it has to be about what education should be about, the knowledge, right? Like, are you going to actually like learn something? And this, by the way, was how geniuses were made. Like in the past, every like really brilliant person had a private tutor that like pushed them like oftentimes from a very young age to learn a lot of this stuff, because and the private tutors were very well educated, and they would teach them, okay, well, here are things that you need to know now. A lot of parents try to do something similar with homeschooling, but I think like more professional tutors, like one-on-one teaching is like just way more effective than classroom type teaching that we're seeing everywhere. And I think even college needs to change out, or like post-secondary education will eventually become way more, one-on-one. And I know for myself, the times that I've learned the most are when I've had one-on-one times with various people, and I can accelerate my learning. I think that's really where education should go, and where it's probably headed.
I can't wait to clip this interview and send it to my mom. I might get kicked out of the house, but it's worth it.
Is she an educator or something?
No, like what you described is in essence like my experience, where like I was given so many tutors for my SAT, for my ACT, get the best test score. So like, quite frankly, my parents could like show off to their friends, like, oh, my son goes to this school. And it reminds me, I don't know if you remember, I want to say now it was like 4 years ago, the college bribery scandal, where like Lori Loughlin from Full House like got caught with a bunch of other parents that they were bribing admissions officers to let their kids in, and it was truly just so that they could go around at like functions or see their friends and brag and be like, my daughter got into USC, well, my son's going to Yale and mine's going to Harvard. It's like on no merits whatsoever, just simply because you have more money. I love the idea of private schools, or like more focused schooling. I remember seeing Jason Calacanis during the lockdowns in 2020 bring up the idea of, hey, I have 5 other families who are interested. If there are any teachers who are willing to come to our house and teach a group of 6 kids, a very like small, tight-knit group, we will pay for like the teachers to come do this. Like, you're going to start to see teacher pay increase drastically as a result. So in my opinion, some of the hardest working people in our society are teachers to a degree, and they do deserve to be compensated justly. Allowing parents to then dictate, hey, you know what, these tax dollars for our property tax that goes to fund the public education system, we're going to take that portion of it out. And instead, every student sort of has like a check behind them from the government if we want. And wherever you send them to school, that check goes to that school, and that school gets more funding as a result. And then all of a sudden you create like a more competitive landscape. I'm curious if something like that interests you at all, or if you're just like, nah, give me small classrooms, tight-knit communities, and like let people just figure it out.
I say let the parents decide. What's interesting is like in Asia, there are superstar teachers that make more than $1 million a year, Like they make seven figures because they're so good at what they're teaching. And that happens because, like really good teacher is really rare. Like we like to pretend every teacher is great and whatever. No, it's on the same sort of like talent scale, like, and the difference between the superstar teacher and like an average teacher is the difference between like Steph Curry and your high school basketball player. Right. Like there are enormous ranges of talent when it comes to educating. And the people that are really good at it should get compensated that same way. And that happens through a market mechanism. If you have a really good tutor that has proven results where they're able to produce some really, really smart kids or whatever, well, I mean, they're going to be in tremendous amounts of demand. But the current education system is essentially run as a monopoly by the government. But like some entrepreneur, if you're coming out of college, right? This used to be the path for a lot of people coming out of college. You would go to an upper class family and you would be a tutor for a few years, right? Right out of college. This would be your first job. You would be the person teaching an upper class family's kids. And you'd rotate out, and they would get people that majored in different things, but that was like a totally normal thing for people to do. That sort of job doesn't exist now. Why doesn't it? There's a lot of parents that would like to see their kids educated very well. Unfortunately, the education system is monopolized by the government. And this sort of option isn't really available. But I think it starts to come back under a Bitcoin standard because like there's going to be demand for really smart people that know how to teach well. So I'd like to see more of that, and certainly it's something that I hope for, but you need to break down the monopoly of government over education first.
I love that. Shout out. Honestly, I had two of the most incredible teachers junior year of high school, Miss Barton and Miss Batson, who like forced us to start thinking critically. And it was like a jarring experience because I wasn't used to it. But I can literally point to those two teachers in particular. And I had a lot of incredible teachers. I was very fortunate. I do come from a comfortable community that our public school system was a private school for all intents and purposes. But shout out to those two for helping not make me a sheep, to say the least.
If you read almost any biography, you find like in the biographies of the geniuses, they almost always had like a private tutor that did exactly what you just said, where they would get challenged, not just like 1 hour every other day. It was for like a year, right? Like, or two, where they would get challenged on all sorts of stuff. And this is how you develop. This is how you get educated. And it's kind of sad that that's so rare right now, because that's the fertile ground from which genius springs, and genius is the fertile ground from which I think we can start talking a little bit about the next article, like real actual innovations and breakthroughs happen.
Yeah, I'm also realizing what time it is. So, Jimmy, I'm going to give you the floor to talk about how you see science and the way they tell us about science being a fiat construct.
Yeah, a lot of it is related to what we just talked about with fiat education, because there is sort of like a momentum around certain things, and they keep going whether or not they're effective, and that's because of the fiat money sort of fueling this beast, right? And science has a lot of these things, and I count quantum computing among them. A lot of stuff around cold fusion or whatever. So a lot of just sort of like feudal ends that keep getting researched over and over again because there's funding for it, because everything is like really slow in the fiat world. And of course, you have a lot of these rent seekers that are in positions of power that get to distribute the money and so on. So they keep they don't necessarily fund things that are good or that benefit humanity. It's whatever is going to help them in their political machinations and positioning in their university or whatever. And I point out in the article that, like, there hasn't been very much that's been done in the past 50 years in terms of science. Like a lot of quote unquote breakthroughs are are terribly minor, or are largely just taking stuff that were breakthroughs before and just sort of scaling it, which you can certainly do with money. But the promise of a lot of these things is that we're going to come up with new breakthroughs through funding it with a lot more money. And I point out that that doesn't work. The Soviet Union tried for decades to do that, to come up with ways to eliminate the West, and they couldn't do it. And this is the thing about fiat science, is that it too is kind of a monopoly, where there's a single funder, which is the government essentially, or some science foundation or something like that, that determines all of these grants, and it's become horribly inefficient and completely rent-seeking as a result. Most of science in the past was done by individuals. A lot of them weren't even engineers. Like they just liked tinkering and trying stuff and experimenting, and they did it because they wanted to learn, and they built stuff and built experiments and so on. A large part of academia that's quote unquote doing research today, it's writing kind of useless papers that, and trying to make results where they don't have any, because it's publish or perish. So it's such a weird dynamic that we have in science. It's no wonder we haven't made much progress.
Chris is going to give me a heart attack if I go down these paths. So I'm not going to give Chris a heart attack, because we do have a little bit of a backstop. I want to go over, like, one of my favorite things with the song sheet, and I love that you're continuing to do it, is at the bottom. You have your like little hit points. And so each of the three of us have one little point that we wanted to riff on with you. And I think that's how we're going to wrap today's episode, because we're definitely going to be late to our staff meeting that starts at 4 minutes. So apologies to anyone on the BM team who's actually watching, and let them know, hey, we're just working, making cool stuff. So I will start. I'm not going to use the one that I actually like suggested I was going to use, although like you fully attacked me, because yes, I did go to college thinking like, I'm just going to fucking party for 4 years, man. And let me tell you, I did, and it was fucking awesome and fun. I did, however, want to talk on the science one in particular. This is a very, very interesting one. The water is a pollutant, and this comes from a list of 10 things fiat science will tell you soon. And it sticks out to me in particular, because like I am a big, big believer in water equality. It blows my mind that, there's a good chunk of the world population that just doesn't have access to clean drinking water, and I could literally go to my bathroom and drink out of the fucking sink if I wanted to, and I didn't do anything to earn that right. So I am conscious and very grateful for that ability. I also, however, like notice little things like on the Chicago futures market. I believe in 2020 they introduced water now as a commodity to be traded on the futures markets, with an expectation that we're going to run into a water shortage in the near future. So I'm curious where your head is at, and maybe those two things are related. But yeah,
I was kind of joking, actually. Water is a pollutant, but obviously, the lack of water is entirely due to the lack of energy, and that's something that we talked about last time I was on the show. It's fiat energy. You can desalinate ocean water and make it completely drinkable. You just need energy and machines to do it. The fact that certain places in the world don't have them is purely due to the lack of reliable energy to do that thing for them. So if you want to blame anybody for the fact that they don't have clean drinking water, blame the West. It's the people in the West that won't give them the equipment or tell them, okay, well, you have to build green energy or do whatever. And like it's anti-human. That's essentially what it is. And you know, I suspect that they'll tell us that you know, we need to conserve more water or whatever, which is ridiculous. Like one of the things that I point out is, you know, the dishwasher from the 1960s ran in 45 minutes and cleaned every dish perfectly. Dishwasher right now takes 3.5 hours and kind of cleans it. The reason is because of water. So they put in regulations that said during one run of a dishwasher, you can only use so many gallons of water. And back in the 60s, they used to use way more water, which is why they got it clean so quickly. You know, this false sort of conservation of water is why your dishwasher is so crappy compared to ones from the 60s.
Very interesting. All right. I love the number 4. Replacing your fully functioning arm with one made by a defense contractor is perfectly safe. I think that again it's very funny, and it is also I think something that will happen in the near future. It'll be like, oh yeah, you know, this software controlled. It'll be even worse. I think it'll be like, yeah, this replacement heart that lets you run 3 times longer while not having to get physical exercise. It's totally fine. It is unhackable, and this big corporation holds the programming, keys so that you can change the parameters. But don't even trip, dog. They will never abuse that. No one will ever hack this database.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking more like with the whole vaccine stuff. Oh, it's all perfectly safe, right? Like but you know, you add robotics to it, and it's like, oh man, it's like converging so many things at once. And it's like, oh yeah, it'll be Bluetooth controlled, and but you know, it's not gonna stuff up pillow in your face in the middle of the night, right? Because you said something bad about Biden or something. It's totally not gonna do that.
Never gonna happen.
No.
I'll keep my point quick, especially because Q stole mine. 8 was the one that I wanted to talk about for sure. But I think we already are seeing the effects of this one. Number 6, we are quickly approaching peak air travel. I think the EU already had like new regulations going out, and Q brought this up on earlier in the podcast. New regulations for flight or a tax flight or an air regulation tax or whatever, but it exempts private jets and private yachts. So it's just so funny. It's like rules for thee, but not for me. So it's just real ridiculous.
Oh, not just a little ridiculous. I just went through Amsterdam airport, like on the both on the way to Oslo and back. There's a giant labor shortage. So everything is like 4 hours to like wait for anything. Even like getting like a thing of water is like a 20-minute wait, and only like every third store is open because they don't have enough workers and stuff like that. This is, I mean, like we're joking a little bit about like how where air travel is getting worse and worse, but at a certain point it just kind of breaks down, right? Like you over-regulate it. Like the one hope I see kind of is like all these like drone companies that are going bigger and bigger. So now they can like drop off like 200-pound packages using drones already. And they're like, if those drone people can figure out how to do that, well, they're going to move into air travel and like disrupt the industry or something. So yeah, that's my hope.
I'm not looking forward to having to buy a few flights right now, to say the least. Jimmy, I'll give you the final word, and then we are going to do a hard wrap because we are so late for our staff meeting right now.
Well, Fiat education, Fiat science, it really is all about sort of Fiat corrupting everything and turning these institutions into zombies that have to run on the blood of newly printed money, which of course is sucked out from the rest of us. So, imagine that lovely image of these fiat vampires that suck on the blood of ordinary citizens. That's essentially what these institutions have become. And it's unfortunate because these were for a long time very important institutions that helped the progress of humanity, but fiat money has corrupted them. And it's not a coincidence that we haven't made much progress. We're not like having rocket ships to Mars and things like that. Instead, we have I don't know, better ways to consume cat videos or something. And that's very, very sad.
Just your gentle reminder that TikTok's trending videos in the US are all these stupid dance videos, but in China, it's like engineering, math, and actual educational content. Don't forget that. That's what I want to leave you with tonight as you go doom scroll on TikTok. Guys, that's a wrap. Have a good weekend. Stack Sats. Jimmy, thank you for joining us. We'll see everyone next week.